Let's talk more about Emmanuel Macron. I'm joined by Clovis Casali here in the studio. Clovis, Macron then this morning in the south of France. He didn't, though, get a very warm welcome, similar to Wednesday?
Absolutely heated welcome, just like yesterday in eastern France, this time in the south of France near Montpellier. And there were even more crowds gathered there to see the French president and voice their opposition. Unions had called for their supporters to turn up, and this was a tiny town in the south of France, and still you had crowds there waving flags, trying to get to the school where Macron was heading, and they were trying to get there with saucepans. We've been talking a lot about saucepans in recent days because French people in Paris and in other towns have been taking to the streets spontaneously with these saucepans, making as much noise as possible. A symbolic move for them. It's a way to say, Emmanuel Macron, you did not listen to us. You did not hear us with your pension reform. So we're making as much noise as possible so you can listen to us. Emmanuel Macron this morning with the Education Minister Pape Ndiaye heading to a school. Education is seen by the French president as a pillar of his presidency. You know, his wife, Brigitte Macron, is a former teacher.
Indeed.
So these are issues very important to him. The meeting he was supposed to have with staff inside the school had to take place in the courtyard because energy workers had cut electricity in the school. We're going to listen to some of the demonstrators who were there in the south of France to see Emmanuel Macron. And we're also going to hear the French president talking to a left-wing MP from LFI. The French president trying to joke a bit about those saucepans. Take a listen.
He's buried democracy, rural life and public services, everything that makes up the French Republic.
Macron decides of a lot in the country, but he won't decide when we stop being mobilized.
Je pense qu'ils vous attendent. Moi, je vais toujours devant. Si les gens sont prêts à parler, je pense qu'ils sont prêts à parler. C'est pour juste les œufs et les casseroles. C'est pour faire la cuisine.
Well, those comments there, Clovis, following on from what he said yesterday when he said, look, pots and pans are not going to help France move forward. So he's kind of sticking with that line. Similar scenes, disgruntled people heckling and, these kind of comments made is likely to happen again. People have got other demonstrations planned.
Indeed. For the time being, the situation is a bit calmer than in previous weeks where we saw these mass protests. Why? Because the main union, the CFDT, said the Constitutional Council agreed for this law, so let's take a pause. We're not taking to the streets right away, but major rally on May Day. May the 1st, all unions getting together, all the French people who are opposed to this pension reform will be taking to the streets. The CFDT union still saying they're angry at the reform, still saying that they're opposed to this pension reform, but it has gone into law. So Emmanuel Macron seems to have got his victory there. But you can see on the streets, still unrest, still a lot of opposition. I've been talking to CGT bosses, leaders of the CGT, which is the main left-wing union here in France. They told me, you know what, we know we're not going to be able to get people massively on the streets because people can't afford to go on strike. They don't have the money to go on strike even more. We are still going to be staging protests, but we're not going to talk about them beforehand. These will be unplanned rallies, flash mobs, if you will. And that's what we've been seeing today, notably just outside of Paris in La Défense area. Take a look. All these demonstrators in the heart of the financial hub, if you will, of France, the business quarters, and they were organizing this demonstration, presumably to voice their opposition at Macron and also at the banking system. So these are the types of actions, operations we can expect in the coming days from the CGT and the more hard left demonstrators. And, of course, May Day, big rally across France, hundreds of thousands, unions hoping millions on the streets of France.
Oh, Clovis, thank you for that kind of roundup of Emmanuel Macron's visit and the protest to come. Thanks very much.